All right, what's going on? Welcome to episode 10 of the Ozheads podcast. We're back after a brief hiatus. Tim, how's it going?
Good.
We got
Good.
a special guest,
Excited.
a longtime friend. Chris, introduce yourself.
How you guys doing? Chris Spencer.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, what do you want me to talk about?
Tell everybody, for the people that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about me. Originally from Mississippi, born and raised there. Was a Ole Miss guy. Played ball there. Played offensive guard and center there.
Were you any good?
I was okay.
You okay?
I was okay.
All right.
Yeah, I was the number one recruit in the state of Mississippi coming out that year.
4-star?
Yeah, I was like a 3-star.
3-star?
No, I was.
Okay, you got to be 4-star to get on this show.
No,
man.
I was a 5-star.
All right.
So I think I passed the bar.
That's good.
And went on to Ole Miss. I was there, Eli center, blocked for him for 3 or 4 years.
That's Eli Manning, by the way. You dropped something.
Yep, Eli
Okay.
Manning. Little
name drop.
But it was interesting because I think I was a junior when I came out of college and wasn't expecting to leave that early. And the NFL committee sent me a grade that I was be a late first round, early second round pick, and I was like, as a center, no way. And I happened to take that opportunity and was drafted by Seattle in first round. Was their first round pick in 2005, 26 overall. And I was actually drafted right behind Jason Campbell and Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, wow. That's a class right there.
So two quarterbacks that did pretty well in the league. And then, one still trying to figure it out if he's going to get back or not. But went on to play 10 years in the NFL. And my last stop that I'm here, got a chance to, get to know you guys was stopping here in Tennessee. Yeah. And played a couple years with the Titans, finished up my career. It was time. 10 years was long enough and shut it down. But it's been a, great journey. Getting a chance to stay here in Nashville has been awesome to get to know you guys. And so excited to be here. So,
Yeah.
Awesome.
We're excited to have you too.
Yeah.
I'm actually fascinated by when I was doing a little bit of reading on you and in your career, and it said that you were projected at first maybe to be in the second round, but you ended up being, in the first round, 26th pick, I believe, or something like that. So I'm fascinated, how were you able to, or how does one, is it just because of demand of the position, or how do you move yourself up from you know what I mean, from the second round to first round? 'Cause that's a big difference.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting story. When I was coming out, I wasn't planning on coming out, and when I got that ladder from the NFL, Archie Manning called me, Eli's dad, and he, I was pretty close with that family, and he called and said, "Hey, I just heard you got a good grade, and I was thinking about, what do you think you're gonna do?" And I said, "Well, I'm going back to school." He was like, "Well, let's dig into some information here before you make the decision." And what we came out of it was, he said, after talking to a bunch of people, this is actually a legit grade. And the one thing that I know, once they see your intangibles, then you'll be a first round draft pick. And so I think it's not necessarily the demand on the position that actually, plays a part, but the fact that I could play both guards, right guard, left guard, and center, boost my stock up. But then also, once I got a chance to see my intangibles off the field, in the classroom, my work ethic and all those different things, that was that I think that was the last little check the box, because the physical side is easy. I was 315 pounds coming out of high school, and 700 some pound squatter leaving high school.
Wow.
So the physical aspect of it was great. And then it's okay, well, then you had a good career at Ole Miss, and then now these guys are trying to get to know you on the NFL level. They start to get to know you and see your knowledge on the board, see how you're, answering questions in interviews, and then, what does that look like, off the field, knowing that, you got a guy that's not going to get in trouble. He's going to do the things he's supposed to do when it comes to injuries, he's going to show up. And that's the thing that last piece that start to move the needle for a lot of these teams.
So Archie Manning calls you. So does a guy like that have little inside intel, hey, Chris, maybe you might want to think twice about it because I kind of know something, and if you go, you're going to go, right? So he knows a little bit of something.
Yeah, he can make the right phone calls.
Okay.
That wasn't the same year that Eli went out, was it?
No, it was the year before. Eli went out the year before me. So he went out 2004, and I was 2005.
I mean, and that was like an unforgettable year because, like, he came out and he went to the Chargers,
That's right.
and then that was when like Rivers came and they did that whole swap.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously, with Peyton and then Archie, Eli, Archie had a lot of experience with that.
Well, and that's why his voice meant a lot to
Right.
me at the time. That the whole coaching staff got fired, and then a new coaching staff coming in at the position that I was playing, interior. You can get hurt at any time. Learning a new offense, new techniques. You never know what the next year is going to look like, and having his tutelage on how do you navigate this process was paramount to ultimately end up changing my life.
Now, were you always center, or did you start at guard, or talk
No,
about
when
that.
I was in high school, I was a defensive tackle my
Oh, wow.
sophomore year,
Okay.
and how I ended up on the offensive side of the ball. I kept wrecking things in practice on the defensive side of the ball, and my head coach got pissed off, and he's like, I'm gonna do his voice because it's always cracks me up.
We like voices.
He would stop practice, and he was like, "Hey, coach, I need to see Spencer over here for one play." And so I come over to the offensive side of the ball, and he's like, he gets his pencil out and he draws it up a play. He's like, "All right, now Spencer, I want you to block down on this guy right here, and let's just see what happens. Here's the snap count." And so I line up and I take the whole right side and I cave it all the way to the
Pancake
other
everybody.
side, and the running back scores, and this is in practice, and he's like, "Hey, coach, he belongs to me now." And so so in high school is when I made the switch over to right tackle, play right tackle my whole high school career, and then I wasn't the prototypical the collegiate in the prototypical height for tackle, and so when I got to Ole Miss, they moved me into right guard, and then all of a sudden, I mean, our O-line was really good. We had Marcus Johnson, Doug Buckles. I mean, we had a really good O-line. And so when I got there, they said, "We're going to move you interior, and that's where you're going to play." And so being that my, Bill was an interior guy with the strength that I had, and it was my first 2 years, my first year and a half, 2 years, I was playing right guard and left guard. So I was rotating around to those two positions. And then the starting center gets hurt in training camp one year. But before that, Eli comes to me and he's like, "You're going to play center." And I was like, "No, I'm not. I never snapped the ball a day in my life." He's like, "You're going to play center, just watch." And starting center gets hurt about 3 or 4 weeks later in training camp. And Eli looks at me and he's like,
Now, why did he say that?
I have no idea. To this day, I
interesting?
never asked him
He
why
knew
he
something.
came to me and said that way before
Yeah.
I ended up moving to center.
Well, I mean, is it such a center seems to me like it's I mean, you've got a lot going on, right? I mean, you got to be on the center, you got to hike the ball, you got to listen and be aware of the quarterback and his cadence and his timing, and I mean, I guess there's crowd noise, and then right after you do that, you have to block. I mean, it seems like it's a really challenging position. Is that
very, very challenging position. That's why I was like, I'm not going in there, because all the things that falls on the center plate, knowing everybody's job, not just the O-line, but what are your running backs doing for pass protection, because then you know how to set the protection, knowing your quarterback cadence, and when he's want to change a play, being able to anticipate it before he makes that change in a play. And so there's a lot that's on the center's plate that, I didn't know if I was ready for, and then all of a sudden a guy gets hurt and I'm thrusted in that position. And the first day of doing it, it was raining.
Oh no.
Yeah, so now I've never snapped the ball a day in my life, and it's raining, and
This is during a game then?
No, this is in practice.
Practice,
It was
okay.
right like a week before the season started, and sure enough, we get through practice. I didn't have a fumble snap, and that's when Eli walked up to me. He's like, "Told you he was going to center."
So did you fail? Did you fail at center, and that what happened?
No, I excelled.
Did you?
Yeah, I mean we didn't.
So what happened? When did you make the switch back?
So the first, I can't remember the first several games of the season, I was starting at center, and then the starting center comes back. He's a senior,
Okay.
and so we start to rotate a little bit. But ultimately ends up, the way I was playing it, it's just like, all right, he's a center now. And so I went full center for about a year and a half before I left, came out.
Got you.
Yeah, which is why I was surprised that I got that kind of grade at. It was like, I mean, most centers have been playing center most of their life, and here I am a year and a half into it. I'm getting ready to go into the league.
So you get to the NFL though. Does everybody on the O line make pretty much the same pay grade, or does centers get
No.
So,
Yeah.
all right. So explain that. So,
Well, I mean, he was drafted in the first round.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, if you went
so-
first round as a center, would you have the same?
Still, even in going in the first round as a center, you get there, you got veteran guys, you got a left tackle.
So
It's not even
okay.
close.
Okay.
I mean,
'Cause,
that
yeah.
position, because you're protecting the blind side of a quarterback, is the the highest
the
paid
highest paid
position
position.
Right. Okay.
on the O line. And then as you start to get in, then your left guard, because he's still blocking the blind side of the quarterback. And then you get into your right tackles there, and the centers, even though you got a lot on your plate, still kind of gets down to
Really?
between it comes out between the right guard and the center may make, sometimes the center may make more than the right guard, or the
Right.
right guard makes more than the center. So we kind of
That
on that same
left
level.
tackle is the
Left tackle is
primo
the,
position.
But still, that's interesting to me because center, you have to. I mean, there's a lot that rides on the center. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you have to do a lot.
but the center's also too, like, you do, and you have help. You got some hands on both sides of you. So no matter where the player's going, you may be getting help from your right guard. You may get a little help from your left guard. So
Yeah.
you I think they kind of take that in consideration. It's not always, you're not one-on-one all the time
Yeah.
with center. Sometimes, but not all the time.
So now, when you were at Seattle, you played with Holmgren.
Mike Holmgren,
You played with Mora for a little bit, and then did you have 1 year with Carroll?
one year with Pete Carroll.
Okay, but the year that you played, so I mean, I went to USC, right? So I was a big fan of Carroll, even though he left in with some controversy, right? Just a little bit of controversy.
Just a tad bit.
Yeah.
That year with Carroll, I read you guys went 7-9,
Yeah,
but you won the division.
yeah.
That's
And
how
then-
weak the division must have been.
And,
huh?
but no, listen. But then they went to the playoffs, and this is in 2010, and they beat
Saints.
the Saints.
Yeah.
When the Saints won the Super Bowl the year before,
Yeah.
and in that game, Marshawn Lynch has like a 64-yard run where he breaks 9 tackles, and apparently the crowd was so loud after the game that it registered a small earthquake on the Richter scale.
Yeah, after that play, that's when it came the beast quake.
The beast quake.
Yeah.
So how was that? Talk about that experience. That must have been unbelievable.
Yes, it definitely was. At the time, you don't really think about it. Now, when I take a step back and look at it, it's like I would forever be cemented in history because of that run in the NFL. It's like, there's only certain plays that happen where you're like, especially when you realize that you're not going to be a Hall of Famer, and then you're like, I got this one thing I can hang my hat on. I was part of that old line that blocked for Marshawn on that play, and I was one of the key guys on that play. As we're running a power,
Yeah.
the nose guard slants across my face, and I kind of push him over, and then as I turn, I see Marshawn. I'm like, oh, he's making a move. What is he going to do? And then I turn back the other way, and I see Marshawn is making his way through the line. I see the safety coming down, and right as I see the safety, I'm like, oh, he's going to squirt through this. And then I turn on the jets to kind of go and just try to get a piece of the safety. And right as I get a piece of the safety, here comes Marshawn right off my ass. And then he gets out and he throws a guy off him. And I was like, oh man, this is about to get interesting. Because I know Marshawn. Marshawn's one of those guys that, like, it's going to take the whole team. If he gets in the open space, it's going to take everybody to get him down. It's not, one little cornerback or safety is not going to get him down. And so as he started throwing people off and the crowd started getting louder and louder, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And then all of a sudden you see Tyler Palamas and Matt Hasselbeck come to get another piece of a guy, and then he breaks through, and then he dives in the end zone, and that place erupted. And like, we're on the field and you can feel the ground shaking.
Wow,
underneath
That's
your feet,
crazy.
And so again, that's one of the things that I can always hang my hat on, being a part of that run. It was unbelievable.
Well, speaking of Marshawn, I saw this clip of Peyton Manning actually interviewing. He's having a conversation with Marshawn Lynch, and they're talking about pre-game rituals in the locker room. You know where I'm going with this? And so Peyton says, so what was your pre-game ritual? And Marshawn's like, well, I'd have a little drink before, get ready to, get going for the game. He's like, and Peyton just deadpan, like, you mean like Gatorade or something, right? He's like, no. He's like, I have a shot of like Hennessy. And I was like, how do you do what he did? Like having, but is that true?
Oh man, this guy
Was that? And then Peyton was like, how'd you get it in there? What, they have it in the locker room? He's like, no, put it in my backpack. I'll bring it in and have it.
I mean, love this guy to death. I mean, one of the realest, truest guys you ever see. Like what he's doing right now in his career is like, that's who he is.
Yeah.
And he would sit there and he's like, the first time he was like, I got to get my pregame routine going on, and he was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm about to get this patrinacy going. I was like,
What?
what is patrinacy? And he's like, you never had patrinacy? I was like, no, man, I've never had patrinacy. He's like, that's that Patron and Hennessy mix. He's like, Spence, Big Spence, you get a quick shot of that, man. It's like gasoline. You're running through the wall. You're running through a brick wall, and I'm just like, Marshawn, I'm gonna take your word for it, because there's only one person that can do that, and that's you. And he's like, yeah, you're right.
That was his thing.
Right. And that was his thing, and he would go out and do his thing, week in and week out, and then he would sit on the sideline and throw Skittles, and he eat Skittles the whole game. So like, the guy was from a different era.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Well, now you were talking. We were talking earlier before we like started doing this on like, I mean, obviously you're a very smart guy. You're very, you have a lot of flexibility. You know what I mean? Like you played guard, the center of the story. How you talked about that, and we were talking about like, how do you kind of like prevent yourself from lifelong injuries so that after football you can live, the life that you want to live.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, on someone like Marshawn Lynch, right? I mean, he's pretty famous for breaking tackles, right? And I mean, getting hit. Yeah. I mean, he was a big guy, but I mean, that's what I'm curious about. Is that like, is it tougher for a running back in general? Because everybody talks about like running backs in the NFL and about maybe they seem to be now the trend is maybe to undervalue running backs as a whole because their shelf life is less. I mean, do you think is that the case? Are running backs the most vulnerable to that, or not necessarily? Or I don't know. What do you think about this talk right now?
Just my personal opinion. I think the evolution of the tight end has played a part in what's happened with the running back. And so when you compound the life shelf of a running back with the evolution of the tight end, I think that's kind of at play right now. Where when you start out, you have a guy, a tight end like Travis Kelce. Mm-hmm. You can go all the way back to what was the tight end for the Saints? Jimmy Graham, who was able to split out wide and run routes, and you can throw the ball up to him in the back of the end zone. He'd go up and get it. He can, wasn't necessarily the traditional blocking tight end, which that move basically put those guys into a category of receiver. And so now you're kind of paying your tight ends at the bottom tier, what you're paying receivers, which takes money out of the pot for the running back.
Mm-hmm. I see.
And so
a blocker away from the running back,
right?
Hypothetically.
Well,
maybe
yes and no.
Okay.
And most offenses are kind of going to that spread and kind of open things up. And so when you have a good tight end, you can play. Most defenses they'll play you in that 6-man box. You got a good running back. Now it opens up things for the running back. And so that's the dynamics that you're playing with. When you're playing with a blocking tight end, you shrink the formation. Now you got 8, 9 in the box. But if you can kind of spread those guys out, and you can still put a tight end on a safety who's fast enough to kind of come from that position to go out and block a safety to get to a linebacker, it gives you a lot more options. And so I think that's what really is at play with what's happening with the running back position. But again, I don't know. I mean, it's
plus the shelf life of a running back's 4.5 years on average. I mean, you don't get a lot of miles out of that.
Well, I mean,
it's a tough position.
It is. You get banged up pretty bad.
But we were talking before about like, I was listening to an interview of Tom Brady, who had obviously famously a long career, and he's talking about doing also preventative measures and how you can kind of do things to mitigate injury hypothetically, besides for the fact of like getting a broken bone or somebody hits your knee wrong or whatever. But I mean, he also has the protection of an offensive line as opposed to a running back. A running back is, you know what I mean? They're going to get hit.
Yeah. Well, you hope you have the protection of an offensive line.
Yeah, right.
We can look at some lines across the league right now, and there's some struggles. But ideally, yes, these guys get protected, get a little bit more protection, and and when you have a guy like Tom Brady who hit the balls out of his hands so quick. I mean, that's why one of the reasons we excel at it in Seattle, because Matt Hasselbeck didn't have a super strong arm. But he was so smart, and he knew where to go with the ball with timing, and he was in Mike Holmgren's system. The ball was out so fast. I mean, we went some years to give up, 10, 11 sacks in a year. And so, and you have to put some of that on, O-line, and you put some of that on a quarterback who knows where to get the ball out to and win.
Now, you went from Seattle then to Chicago.
To Chicago.
For like a year.
2 years.
2 years in Chicago, sorry. And then Chicago to Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
But yet now, when you left Tennessee, then you're here in Nashville.
Yeah.
So what is it about Nashville that kind of, and you're actually, Catherine, your wife, I didn't know, she's from Vancouver.
Yeah. Vancouver,
And she's
Canada.
great. I mean,
Yeah.
she's awesome. So I was going to ask you like how you guys met first of all, but like, why did you choose Nashville as your home as opposed to like a Seattle or, Chicago?
Well, I probably have to go back to how, when we met. My wife and I met at Ole Miss. And
Okay.
yeah, we met in college. She was a volleyball player.
Yeah.
She, came to Ole Miss on a volleyball scholarship. And she was kind of over being in the rainy, Northwest. And so she chose to come to Mississippi where it's really hot and humid. And so I think she had a big culture shock when she got there, though. And she decided that when we actually started dating, she was like, I don't think I ever want to live back in the South. And so, oddly or not, then I get drafted by Seattle. And we're 2.5 hours from her home. And so we always kind of thought that we'd build our life in Seattle. And then as we left Chicago, it was too cold for us. It was like, whew, Mississippi kid, I'm not ready for all this cold weather. And believe it or not, in Vancouver, it doesn't get that cold up there. It's not like, being on the east coast of Canada. And so when we got here, we were just thinking like, all right, we have young kids right now. We can take them to a place, get all 4 seasons. We don't have to dress them up in rain gear all the time or snow gear. So, let's enjoy these 2 years and then we'll head back out to the West Coast. And she came here and she was here for 4 days and she was like, I don't ever want to leave. And I was like, what do you mean? We just built our life on the West Coast. And now you come to the South after you told me you don't want to be in the South and you want to be here. And well, when you have kids, everything changed.
Yeah,
like how
right.
the mores and values you want to raise your kids in. And so when we got here, she would take the kids to the playground and the parents were parenting the kids. The kids were being kind and helping our little kids up on the monkey bars and all that. And I think her seeing like, the quality of life you could have with raising your kids and knowing how you want to raise your kids, she saw that here. And when she said it, she meant it. And we've been here ever since, which I was happy about. I'm from Mississippi. And so being back in the South, I always wanted to be back so I can get back to my roots and farming and hunting and things like that. Yeah. And so that's why we end up staying. Yeah. And too, like, as I started to get to know people like you guys around the city and like I knew once I got done, I wanted to do some entrepreneurial stuff.
Yeah.
And this city is amazing for, young entrepreneurs that, people just want to help and not take advantage of you, but want to help you,
right.
Exceed. And so that was another reason why staying here was exciting for us.
Yeah, I think it's interesting about how you've utilized your kind of past experiences of, what you've learned from playing football and going to different, overcoming injuries and taking that learning and wanting to help other players mitigate or navigate through that too. So can you talk about like your latest kind of venture and how that kind of addresses that?
Yeah, when I first retired, I always thought that, the reason why a lot of our guys struggled with making that transition was because of injuries. And so I started a company that can do, that worked on prehab programs and restoring, athletes and continuing education for athletic trainers and physical therapists. And then I quickly realized as I kind of going back to one of the reasons why I was trying to, kind of give back to sports is, 75% of guys were broke or divorced within 5 years. And that number was still just really shocking to me. And so when I started to look at it from an injury perspective, it was you were doing this work, but it was really hard to really scale it across the country because the things that we were doing, you had to really be hands-on with. And that meant you would have to have a lot of people. And so as we started to really understand that space, we started to look at what type of personality should someone have for the type of programs we were doing. And in that moment, I started realizing like a lot of us just don't know who we are. Identity has been tied into sports for so long. There's nothing in the system that is showing you who you are as a person from a personality standpoint. And then how does your behaviors influence your personality, how your personality influence your behaviors. And so, a group out of Mississippi, a law firm out of Mississippi came to me and said they had they had a ideal of taking social media and kind of basically scanning it and telling teams what players are doing. Well, as we started to have this conversation with these guys, I said the bigger ideal is to take social media data, as we've been doing a lot of research on this over the last 3 years. You have personality assessments, but it only gives you a snapshot of someone right then and there. And so I said, I have an idea if we take social media data and look at it over time, from the first time a kid started posting on social and start to look at their personality and their behaviors through their social lens, will give you a more complex profile on a person of personality behaviors. So we started down a track and developed some language models to look at open source data, interviews, anything that a player has spoken, we can analyze and build personality and behavior profiles from, with the idea that we have a team of psychologists, sports psychologists, that we can help coaches understand how to coach certain guys, being that mental health is a huge issue in our country now.
Sure.
You can't coach players the way you used to coach them. And then coaches are missing on a lot of players, because when I was growing up, you can yell at a guy, you can do all these different things, but you can't do that anymore. And so coaches are missing on players because they think the player is not capable of handling the tough coaching. Well, what we're trying to help them understand is how to adjust their thinking around coaching certain guys, and where the personalities are going to become an issue when there's going to be a conflict with a coach or a player and a coach. And so we've been working on this platform, Fit Insights, for the last 3 years. And now we're just kind of, with all the things that are happening in the college space with transfer portal and the NIL deals, we're starting to make that transition into the college space to kind of help manage and help these kids understand who they are, so that they can learn early in life that their skills are transferable, but also how to maximize their time on the fields. Because again, it goes back to injuries. A lot of times injuries come from a psychological aspect of things, where you're telling yourself, don't mess up, don't screw up on this play. And so you put your nervous system in a fight or flight, where now at some point it's going to give, something's going to break. And so we've learned a lot over the last several years of looking at how do those pieces play into, the longevity of your career, but then how do you make that transition out of sport into something, having the confidence to do something in business, or do, whether it's project management, whatever it may be, that you have the skill set, that you have the skill set to do it, and have the personality to connect with people in a way. And so that's a lot of our big passion project of mine that we've been working on now.
That's great.
Yeah.
How do you think the advent of the NIL contracts has affected kids? Do you think it's a good thing? I mean, obviously they're going to get their money, what have you, but has it been a good thing in the long run, or an obstacle in a sense?
Well, I mean, I think these universities are making a lot of money, so I think there's room for players to get paid. I feel like the way that we've gone about it, and I'm going on record as saying this, is that there's a lot of unforeseen consequences now that's coming from it, and that's, the resilient side of things, and teaching people adversity and how do you get through sitting behind an All-American for 2 years before you get your time. When things are not going your way, I can just jump in the transfer portal and leave. If I don't like my coach, I can leave. Well, in reality, in the real world, you're going to have a job that you just can't jump up and leave because you don't like your coworker. And that's a big piece of why we trying to help these guys understand their personality and behaviors and know where they're going to have disconnect, so they can find tools to actually work through those things versus jumping ship and leaving. So I think that there's a lot of unforeseen consequences with this. And the unfortunate side of it is a lot of kids who are leaving are still sitting in the transfer portal. You hear all the big stories of the Colorados and teams that are turning over players, but it's still not a lot of schools that are taking, 15 to 20 players a year out of the transfer portal. And so you still end up missing out on it. And so I think this generation of athlete thinks that, if I jump in the transfer portal, or if somebody's going to offer me more money, I'm going to take it. Well, another unforeseen consequence of just following the money is your mental well-being. Now you end up in an environment, yes, the money was good, but you're not a good fit. You're not a good fit for their program. You're not a good fit for the community. You take a kid out of Florida and he goes to Wisconsin because there's a lot of money. Not saying that's what they do, but he could go take some money there. Well, he gets there and he's like, whoa, this is not the environment that I thought I was going to be in. So how do you protect that? And so So I think that's where things are kind of, getting off the rails when it comes to.
I just think the whole concept, though, I mean, you imagine a student athlete, their major is communications, whatever it is, right? And you're in class and you're going, okay, I'm going to make $2.4 million this year. Why am I studying this, whatever? I mean, why should I even be sitting in this class? It's just like you're already, you know what I mean? Or even sitting next to a guy like that who's a millionaire already, and you're an undergrad and you can't even, you got to work a job at Starbucks and to get through or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just weird. The whole thing is just kind of.
It is. Again, that's another unforeseen consequence, I think, that's going to come up, is that you're going to not put much effort into your education. And then just because you're making $1 million, $2 million right now.
Yeah. But imagine as an 18, 19, 20-year-old, that's all the money in the world.
Right. I remember when I was coming out, I was thinking, oh man, I can sign a big contract. I can get my mom a house. I can get me a house. I can do all these different things. And then you start realizing, like, man, taxes are coming. You got an agent. You have a financial advisor. You have all these people that's on the payroll that's trying to manage all of this for you, help you manage this, because you're trying to learn how to do this. And before you know it, you realize, like, this is not enough money to set me up the rest of my life. This is a good jump start in life.
Right.
But it's not something that I can sit back and say, oh, I'm set for the rest of my life. And that's what my fear is for a younger athlete who is, again, when you come in the league, you're getting financial advisors and all those things. Now that you're in college, you're still on the age, and I don't think they figured all that out yet. Well, how do you now have financial advisors? How do you have all these different people to help support you like you do on the professional side, without getting into a place where, now these guys are, have people who are, out chasing other bids for them, and so again, there's a lot that's.
Well, and I mean, and on that note, like my kid, I went to Southern Cal, so Southern Cal's QB is, Caleb Williams, who won the Heisman Trophy,
$2.4 million
valuation. And the big thing now is that he said, if I don't get drafted by these teams, then you know what? I might stay one more year. He has one more year of eligibility to play at SC, which you would never have heard of that before. Of course he would leave.
Right. He's going to make $2 to $3 million that year.
And that's the other side of it now, is that you may have a chance of keeping a guy in school. A guy may have the ability to finish out his education because he don't have to leave. When you're making that leap and jump to go to the NFL, especially if you're leaving early, it's like, this is an opportunity I can't pass up. And now that the money is kind of, is catching up with that, it's kind of like, well, I'm making money now, so I can help with my family. I can do the things that I want to do, and I can stay here and keep playing.
Yeah, but I don't think anybody's done that yet, right? Would he be the first guy that has done that? Has somebody done that?
I'm not sure
now.
I'm not sure.
When did NIL actually start? It's pretty 2
pretty
years.
recent.
2 years ago.
2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he would be a good example, right? Because he won the Heisman. He's on commercials now.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that when he's on commercials, the commercials is not NIL money, right? That's
part of it.
Is it
name,
part
image,
of it,
likeness? Yeah, that's
ancillary?
part of it. Like when they give him he's got a $2.4 million valuation in NIL. That's inclusive of. It's
so
not
when
like
you see him on a McDonald's commercial.
Yeah, that's part of. He's getting paid.
Part of the NIL money that he's
you
getting.
couldn't do that before NIL. You were a college athlete. You couldn't.
Right.
You couldn't do that.
Right.
But it seems to me that what you were talking about also, Chris, is almost like because everybody knew about the Wonderlic test. This seems like it would be a real big benefit to ancillary to the Wonderlic.
Yeah.
Do you view this as an ancillary thing to Wonderlic that would be because that I think more tests maybe
IQ.
That would be IQ or that's almost like the SAT now versus your essay.
Right.
Which tells you maybe more about where you're from, your background, your personality, your history, which that's pretty important.
Yeah, and it's we're more on the EQ side of things and understanding the personality behaviors, and the Wonderlic is more that IQ side of things, because as we know, I haven't really talked about this a lot, but as I was a kid, I was diagnosed with dyslexia, and so when I was diagnosed, there was no tools, there was no resources to help me through school, and so it was a challenge getting through school. But I figured out how to navigate my way through it. That worked for me. But what I did have was the EQ side of things, and knowing how to connect with people and being able to see the big vision. At the time, I didn't think about that. I was thinking about like, they look at me as a dummy because I, struggled early on with reading and all, spelling and things like that. But as I've kind of you get out of school, you get on the other side of it, you realize like, man, my skill set is tremendous for the things that I want to do in life, because when you look at it, Jay Leno, Whoopi Goldberg, Branson,
like Einstein, I think even Steve Jobs was dyslexic. I believe.
Like you have all these people who've gone through that, and and I didn't really at the time I wasn't even looking at that to kind of like give me some comfort that I'm gonna be okay in life, and so I think when you start to look at it from that side of things, the EQ, the IQ stuff is great, but when you can see the big picture, I'm playing center and I can see the big picture, and I can see when safeties are moving, linebackers are moving. I can see, if a guy's, an inch over, I can anticipate things that are coming, which, gave me a leg up at the position because I can see the big picture of things. And so we don't necessarily want to rely on the IQ side of things. And, I think there's a balance in understanding the EQ side of things, and understanding, what are my tendencies as a, person who is, maybe say, has low composure or high composure. Like, how does that play into when I need to do a job? Are you going to jump off sides, or are you going to be the guy that can sit there when the heat is on you and handle the pressure? And so I think understanding those little intrinsic pieces of your personality then helps you, excel at your job, and understand where you're not. And then you can start to work on like, how do I, versus not knowing.
Yeah.
Oh, I keep going out here. Talking too much.
No. Yeah, it's the same thing. What was I going to say on that?
I want to know how you got in cigars, since this is a cigar podcast.
Yeah, it's true. That's true.
Well, tell us about your first cigar experience, and how did it grow from there?
So my first cigar experience was I was in Canada one year in Vancouver, training off season. Going through college, I didn't drink. My first several years in the NFL, I didn't drink. And my brother.
How do you do that? How do you go through college and not drink?
I think because I had some alcoholics in my family, and I was just like, I never want to be like that. And then I was big on peer pressure. I was not going to be peer pressured into doing anything. Right. And so early on in high school, you get kids trying to peer pressure you, and I'm like, dude, I'm bigger than you. I'll whoop you up. And I say, you're not going to peer pressure to me. And so then it became this thing of like,
do that.
I'm not going to get peer pressure. And then you go to college and you got guys that are just your size or bigger. Yeah. And they're like, come on, we're going to get a drink. And I'm like, no, I don't drink. And they're like, you going to drink tonight? I'm like, no, I'm not going to drink. And then it becomes
Are you going to have the Pennacy?
Yeah. And then it becomes like, look.
Patrenacy.
I'll fight all of you guys if that what it means. You guys may beat me, but I'm not drinking. And then all of a sudden these guys are like, all right, cool.
They respect that.
Respect it. And so then it just became a thing. And I got to the league and it was like, no, I don't drink. And the guy was like, all right, whatever. And so I was, hanging out with my brother-in-law in Canada one year, and we were just sitting around, sitting on the ocean, just hanging out, just chatting. He was like, let's walk up to the cigar shop and get a cigar. And I was just like, no, I don't smoke. He was like, come on, man, lighten up a little bit. So I was like, all right, cool, let's go up here. And the cigar, my first cigar was a Partagas
Series D.
Series.
God, you just went off in the deep end.
Yeah,
you just like
jump right off in.
Like,
jump right off in there.
I started with a backwoods. He starts with a Partagas Series D. It's like
the easiest first cigar.
You just go right into it.
Just jump right in, we lit it. I'm trying to figure out, how do you smoke this thing? What do you do? And so I started smoking. I'm like, man, it's got some good creamy flavor to it. This is actually pretty good. Not what I expected from a cigar.
Right.
And then I was hooked ever since then. I left there. The next day I had 2 cigars. I would start like just trying different cigars. And so I went through, all of the Cuban line. Being in Canada, you can get them easily.
Yeah. Right.
So I started going through all the lines of the different Cubans and trying them out, trying to figure out which ones I like. And as I started to, we were back and forth to Canada all the time. I was coming back with boxes of cigars coming back. I don't know if I can say this on podcast, but I was putting them in my truck coming across the border. I remember I got an F-250, and in the back seat you can pop up. I probably had like 15 boxes. It's in there. And so, I'm one of those guys, when I get into something, like I get all the way down into it.
Same.
Like I remember I spent like $30 on a cigar just to cut it open to see what the insides were really like. And so just trying to figure out what, why does this look so like clean on the outside, but then you get an inside, you got all these like veins and all that. And so so that was my first cigar experience that got me hooked. And to be honest with you, this was in 2008.
Yep.
And I didn't have my first like domestic cigar until I came here in Nashville. And met Michael Roos. Shout out to Michael Roos. That's how I got to know John.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's like, "Oh, come on, man. Let me show you. Got to try some of these." And I was like, "Okay." And then my first domestic cigar was the Headley Grange.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And so that kind of got me, I'm like, all right. And didn't think it was okay. All right.
You did the opposite of what most people do. Most people start here and they go up to the Cubans. You went straight Cuban and then, all right, then we'll try some of this other stuff down.
Proximity.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And now you're more than just a casual cigar smoker, because you told me about like the humidor you've built at your house, and it's insane, the collection you've got. It's ridiculous.
I wish I have a picture of it. It's like, in most of my I got room for about 800 cigars, and I think my top 3 shelves are all like different crown heads.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then I have an aging on the bottom of some crown heads, and so.
So how do you like Cuban cigars versus non-Cuban cigars now? Do you have a taste still for Cuban cigars, or how do you compare them?
Well, but I think most of the Cubans I was smoking, like compared to what I smoke now, is a lot lighter and like mild cigars to me. And that
the Cuban cigars,
is a lot milder, and my palate has grown so much that I tend to only smoke a Cuban cigar on occasion stuff now. Most of the time, I want to sit down and have a cup of coffee with a cigar, or I want sit down and have a bourbon. Now I'm starting to kind of get into certain wines with cigars, and so when you kind of get more of those full body creamy cigars, it's like. And plus, with all the stress that I have with the companies that I'm doing, like I want something that's going to like settle me down, like just so I can relax and think and do things. And so most of the Cubans is more so like just enjoyable, like to kind of they most of the ones I have they're good cigars, really good cigars. But the really full body of what I smoke now is like that's when I can think. I can check out of things. And my wife probably said I got a problem because I probably smoke 2 to 3 cigars a day now.
Oh, wow.
That's not a problem.
Yeah.
Is there a certain...
I have no problem with that, actually.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem, but, that's why I say my wife said that's a problem.
Is there a certain Cuban that's your kind of go-to that you found like...
It's still the
Partagas?
The Partagas, the 2, the 4, the 2 and the 4 is still my go-to, the Monte Cristo. I still have, I have a bunch of those in there. And so... I try to just not really go to those as much as I used to. Yeah. I get really expensive too. Oof.
Yeah.
Really Party has just released a cigar that's going to retail for $306 a stick.
Cuban?
Yep.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I mean, even the I think the Lancero, the Trinidad. I think I looked at those and they were like $700 something a box.
That's
now.
ridiculous.
Yeah. So when you're looking at your humidor and you got plenty of good premium cigars in your humidor, it's like $700 on those. I'm good. I'm gonna stay over here for a while. Yeah.
When you do talking about your technology again, when you go and have dialogue or conversations, are they with other teams then, or I mean, who do you go and talk to about it then?
Yeah, we've kind of tailored our system to go B2B because there's a lot of resources to help support athletes. And we also know a 17, 18-year-old kid is not really caring about this side now. You start caring about it when you're getting closer to the end of your career. And so the ideal is to support these organizations where the resources are there so they can start dropping seeds of areas that these guys can work on without them really, engaging in it. It's just something that becomes part of their curriculum as they moving through college or moving through high school, that they can do that. And so we have most of our businesses is the B2B. So we're sitting down with athletic directors or universities. In the professional side, we're sitting down with team GMs or their director of performance. And then I think we just finishing up a module that we are been working on to go into the high school and college space that we can kind of go directly to the consumer and scale it down where it's not so much information, just enough to say when you're looking to get drafted or you're looking to get a scholarship, there's a box of 4 quadrants of you got your technical, tactical, and the physical aspect of things. Teams have done a really good job on that space. The one that's missing is the psychological aspect of things. And so, psychological is not just your IQ, it's also your personality behavior, it's also environmental challenges you may have that could play a part, whether you had, what your upbringing is. You had parents who, 2 homes, two household parent where both parents are off working all the time. You may have developed some things that your parents are not there, or you got a kid growing up in inner city, not having a dad around or mom around, so all of that plays a part into building your profile and your personality.
That makes so much sense, right? Because that's such a, how many times do you hear about the Titans that drafted players that they thought were first rounders. They thought were going to be slam dunks. And then you find out that they have all this emotional baggage that they end up being a bust.
Yeah. And that's the thing, about personality and behaviors is that how, you can thrive in this environment, but then when that environment shifts just a little bit, do you have the resilience and flexibility within your personality behaviors to sustain that same type of performance in this environment? And so understanding how those pieces kind of transition to different environments is really key to maximize, especially now when you spend a lot of money on guys. Now this is something you got to get right now. And so so we're in that time where it could be really interesting for us to really help support and advocate for players, but also make it a win-win for the organization to utilize the resources that they already spending a lot of money on.
But I see that every school, every college could utilize this. You know what I mean? And there's so many colleges. How do you kind of go about? How do you start? Is it easy or is it hard to get into those dialogues or conversations with these universities?
It's
given how big they are.
Yeah, it's a challenge because it's a challenge because there's so many moving parts.
Right.
Who is the ultimate buyer? Just trying to figure out all that in college because you have, your head coaches are now making $7 million a year on average, and so in your Power 5 schools, and so who's the voice? Is the athletic director? Is it the coach? Is it the performance director who sees everything that's happening with all sports? Because we don't just do this for football. This is cover all sports, male and female sports. And so it is a little bit of a challenge for us to really going into these universities, understand what their challenges and their pain point is. Because again, we have about 77 different data points that we can slice and cut our data in any kind of way. But what's impactful for you? Where do you need to improve on performance? Whether that's, your recruiter talking to a head coach, here's what you need to know about this player, whether that's your player development that's doing development work with the athletes on a daily basis. And so we can look at it from a lot of different angles, just trying to figure out what are those specific pain points for them.
I would think, did you pilot it at anywhere? I would think that we're here in Nashville. Vanderbilt seems to be a kind of a place that would, you know what I mean, be kind of open to, have there been any kind of schools that you want to pilot this with, or?
Well, we've piloted all across, all our major league sports, NFL, Major League Baseball, European soccer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've been, across the gamut as we are trying to figure out all the right pieces and, how to deliver this information. Because again, it's all backed by science. It's psychology, but our coaches, trainers, all these people, we don't want them to go back to get a psychology degree.
Right.
So we have to, really check in with these guys to distill this information into a usable format for them. What are you looking for? Coachability, character, leadership, grit, resilience. So we've kind of distilled all that information down into a usable format for our, our coaches and our, the people who are looking at this on a daily basis. And so now we have, I don't know if I'm at liberty to say that the teams that we're working with right now, but we are piloting it right now in colleges. We have several colleges that we're running their full roster, helping them understand who they have in their room already. So when they go out to recruit, they know what areas they need to address with different recruits. So it's not just a guy who's super talented, because he's super talented, it doesn't mean he fits your culture and your environment. And so having an understanding what that looks like most coaches know how to do this from a gut feel and from, doing it for so many years. This is a way to put data behind it, to remove some of the bias we have as humans when it comes to looking at a certain player, or I like this, the way this scout sees this player versus another scout sees this player is not going to be the same because of their experiences. And so trying to remove some of those things so that you can see what resources you need to have available for a guy, based off the data.
Now, I wonder, my father always taught me that, like, when you smoke a cigar, you are relaxed, you slow down your breathing, and also it is a stimulant where you can connect with people. So will cigars be a part of this test?
Now that I'm doing this podcast, I'm like, maybe I need to make this part of my ritual when I go and sit down with teams. It's like, you guys don't have to have a cigar, but I'm going to have a cigar while I do a demo for you.
Well, so I mean, hey, there are a lot of people that are in sports that love cigars and, connect over cigars. So maybe not a bad concept, Chris.
My team laugh at me all the time because, we have an office where I can go out back and have a cigar, and we'll be on a Zoom with our marketing team or our psychology team. And all of a sudden they'll see a big cloud of smoke come up and like, guys, don't mind me. This is how I think, just you'll get used to it.
I like that.
So it's a big part of my daily, just being able to relax and think.
Well, I mean, I will give you this. Like, you and your wife have done a really good job of being involved in the community and being a part of the community. You're always accessible, easy to talk to, a friendly face, so I have to give you guys compliments on how you guys have been really, I think, deliberate about wanting to do that. And that's made you kind of really well liked in our city. So
it's been important to us, in pretty much every city we've been in, and just being able to connect with people. I'm a people person, so there's not a person that I want. People are interesting to me, just to sit down and talk to people and hear their story, because I think about my story and where I come from. It's very interesting for me to be where I am, and especially now in technology and psychology, being a farm kid from Mississippi. And so I think if I have this interesting story, think about all the other people who have very interesting stories that has probably never felt comfortable with sharing their story, but, because no one has kind of made them feel at ease. And so I like to, my personality is to have people feel comfortable around me where they feel like, I've never been able to share this with anybody, but I feel like I can share this with you. And so, and I enjoy that when people can kind of let go and share things that, that they've never shared to get it off their chest, because all this stuff that we keep trapped in, and no one knows about, it ultimately can be a demise for us in the long run. So, and that's why I love cigars, because it you could be sitting in a place and be sitting next to, one of the wealthiest guys in town.
Right.
And now you got something in common when you never thought you would have something in common.
Also, I think on that note of kind of being involved in the community and community engagement, I think is sometimes underrated or overlooked. You know what I mean? So I was walking with my two kids on Sunday. We were walking my wife in the neighborhood. Maybe we were going to get something to eat. And somehow we got on the topic of I think Rob Baronis, our kicker of the Titans at the time. And then it was I think it was Michael Griffin, who was our safety at the came to visit my older kid at his school. We had a relationship with Rob. With Michael, I think it might have been through a charity or something, an auction thing where we got it so he could come to the school. And so Michael Griffin came and gave I remember he had some pink gloves because of breast cancer awareness to my son in his class. And my son never forgot that. He's like, oh yeah, who was the guy that gave me the pink gloves? Right? I mean, it was just sort of it makes a difference, right? I mean, this was in first grade.
Yeah.
And my now 18-year-old remembers that.
Yeah.
It just shows what kind of power that interaction has, particularly from a professional athlete.
Yeah, because it's no one really talks about this side of it, but there's a very small percentage of guys who make it to that level.
That's right.
And so less than 1% make it. And so when you have a chance to kind of pour back into people to give them that, here's my story, to give them the hope to be the one that make it, it's a joy. And even if they don't make it, they know that I love this sport so much, and I was able to connect with somebody that played this sport. It goes a long way for how people navigate through life, and so I see it as a positive, a blessing to be able to do that myself, because I watch games today and I realize I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that for 10 years. Especially when you see some of these D linemen today that these guys are, the Aaron Donalds of the world, and I mean Fletcher Cox, and it's like, whew, I'm glad I retired now.
Really?
So you played for the Bears, and one of our beloved friends and cigar smokers, Dick Butkus, who I went to college with his son, Matt Butkus, who, great guy, but didn't play football like his dad did, but great guy. He liked smoking cigars too.
Oh, yeah.
And when I was kind of like, I was looking over, like, Googling him and trying to see his last interviews. And I thought it was really interesting that he, at his time, he said he never, I didn't know, no idea. He said he never lifted weights. His whole regimen, how he got, physically big, was from moving furniture. Which he said was brutal. I mean, like, but that was part of his like background and his culture, is that like, he had family that were like, moving furniture.
Yeah.
But I saw him later in life. You know what I mean? He had like physically he played. He was a very physical player, obviously.
One of the baddest men who walked this earth in that
Right.
position.
But I see you walking around. I mean, you look very fluid and in good shape. And I mean, like so what are your are there some secrets that you have that you do that you can kind of share with us, that like, like when I was listening to Tom Brady, he drinks a lot of water. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Do you have any sort of secret? I mean, obviously we know cigars is one.
That's it. But to the Buckus family, his nephew coached me. He was a assistant line coach, Luke Buckus in Chicago. And so
nice.
Got to know that family. And then Roos would host a golf and fishing tournament out in Eastern Washington, and he would come out and we all sit down and have cigars together.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
did one of those, and Matt was there. That was a good story.
Yeah.
Did you have a Patronacy?
He had more than a few Patronacies on that trip.
Matt will be inspired to try the Patronacy.
Yeah, just suffice to say, we were getting ready to get on the plane the next day, and we saw Matt stumbling around looking for his luggage. He hadn't gone to bed the whole night.
That's the Matt I know.
Yeah. Oh,
that was the year before I came out.
That was the first. I think that was his first
First
fishing
one,
ship.
yeah.
Yeah.
But secret that I have, I won't say it's a secret. When I first retired, my goal was to you see linemen, typically most of your linemen do well at trying to get the weight off them pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. If you don't get it off quickly, it's tough to get off. And so when I first retired, I was following a book. This lady named Haley Pomeroy, she wrote a book about your metabolism and how it all worked. And so I followed her process for, about 6 months, and I went from 315 to, 265,
Oh, wow.
over, 3 or 4 month period. And then over COVID, you stop getting on the scale, you think like, my clothes will tell me when I'm gaining weight. Mm-hmm. Well, I realized when I started buying Lululemon and John Varvatos and, clothes that like got that little stretch to it, Paige jeans, that I put my clothes on, I'm like, oh, it still fits. I'm good. Oh, I'm good. Not like the old traditional Levi's where
There's
no
forgiving.
give, zero give. And I look up and I was back at 306. This is about 6 months ago, almost 6 months ago now. And I went to get a checkup and got on the scale, and my doctor was like, man, you've packing it back on, aren't you? I was like, I guess I am. Wow, what am I do here? And so because I get, my discipline around, when I realize like I don't want to be the guy that, I got 3 kids. I don't want to be the guy that, just let it go completely and, start having heart issues and things like that. So I started doing this 48-hour fast, which then kicked me into ketosis. And then I would follow a keto diet. I followed that for about 2.5 months, and every week I would do 48-hour fast, and I did that for about 2 months, and the weight just started to pour back off me, and then and now I'm back down to about 258, 260, And I do once a week. I still do a 36-hour fast to start my week, and it's helped tremendous with my clarity, my focus, and maintaining my weight where I can still enjoy the foods I want to eat. And I eat mostly pretty clean during the week. The weekends, I may, football season, some wings, some cheese dip here and there. But but I've found a routine with this fasting that's helped me. Intermittent fasting didn't work for me. The 18 hours, only eat 6 hours. It really didn't work for me. But doing a full coffee, water, once a week, it just resets me, and it resets my insulin levels and sleep well, all of that. And so that's kind of been my routine for the last 6 months. And
have you tried that?
I couldn't go 36. I mean, I probably could. I've done the intermittent fasting. That worked really well.
I've done intermittent fasting too.
That worked well for me. Yeah. But I mean, as long as I stay, I know my weight pretty good by now. So I'm like, I'm okay.
Yeah.
When I need to cut back, I'll just cut.
Do you not you don't get like starving like?
The first 2 weeks that I did it, I was starving. My body was like, man, look, we're not designed to do this.
How do you not go mentally nuts
I was
when
like
that
starving,
happens,
which my cigar consumption really picked up.
Sure,
when I was doing it, like coffee, water, cigars. Coffee,
that probably
water,
like curbs your appetite.
Right? It was like perfect. Coffee, water, cigars. I was like, okay, I can survive this. And then after that first 2 weeks, my body got used to it, and now mentally it doesn't even affect me.
Would you do it at the beginning of the week then?
Yeah, I would start Sunday afternoon about 6 o'clock, and then I won't eat until Tuesday around around 10 o'clock.
Oh my God!
Yep.
And then all hell breaks loose.
Not for the first that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm pretty good. It may break loose on Saturday. And then
I want a $5 donut.
Yeah, exactly. I love some $5 now.
Man, you remember this thing called the zone diet?
Yeah.
I did that, and I went from like 190 to like 160, right? But I remember that it was like 5 days a week you ate zone-friendly meals, and I was really strict about that. And then that sixth day, for 24 hours, you could eat whatever you want. And so I would literally wait till midnight on Friday night, and at 12:01, I'd open the pack of Oreos and a gallon of milk, and I was eating Oreos and milk and this. I just ate like a pig that day, but it never affected me. I looked sick though. I was like 160.
See, my problem with that is that it carries over to the next day.
Oh no! By the end of that day, I was like, I'm done. I'm like, okay, I'm not craving this food anymore. And then I go back to eating zone-friendly meals. It was good.
Which is why I do my 36-hour fast and then start on Sunday, because it gives me that mark. And I'm like, because I always tell myself, are you only going to do this on Saturday? And then all of a sudden, like, my wife is like, oh, after church, we're going to go to brunch. And then we end up somewhere, and I got some biscuits or pancakes. And then I'm like, man, now it's carried over into Sunday. And then before you know it, I'm like, well, we had brunch now. We might as well go stop by Martin's and get some wings and go home. So it's like, it can snowball for me real quickly. So there's this window where I say I'm going to fast at this time, and this is every week. Now I kick it in every week and I do it, and it kind of stops me from snowballing.
Yeah. That's great. Interesting.
Well, should we wrap it?
Yeah.
We good?
That was great.
That was great.
Thank you,
Chris. Thanks for
time.
for the time and the insight. That's all the good stuff going on. If anybody wants to look into like what you're doing or whatever, is there something you want to plug, like Instagram or a website or anything like that?
Just go to my LinkedIn. Chris Spencer, got a LinkedIn there, and you can see all of, we do a good job of different articles and things that are coming out. Just kind of trying to be a thought leader in the space. We are working on a bunch of new marketing stuff right now that we'll probably roll out the first of the year, where we'll start newsletter and things like that, where people can really see what's happening behind the scenes we'll probably do it every quarter. To kind of keep up what we're doing, but it's been fun. I've been enjoying it, and really enjoyed getting to know you guys and the cigars.
Likewise.
You guys, the experience y'all have
Definitely.
in cigars. That learning. I mean, John, the first guy, taught me how to retro inhale. I didn't know how to do that, and that changed the game for me. And so, getting more flavors out of cigars, and so I've really enjoyed the product that you guys have been working on over the years. And,
Appreciate the support for sure.
Tim,
100%.
excited for you to be back in the space.
Oh, thank you.
The things that you're doing right now, it's like you never miss. You haven't been gone, and so excited for you and what this
Thank you.
this new passion.
Thank you.
Reinserted piece of what you know who you were. See it going again. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you for everything that you do for the community too. You and Catherine and your family are great assets for our community over here, and we're so proud to have you in Nashville and call you guys Nashvillians. So appreciate everything that y'all do for our city and our state, and what you're doing for sports also is inspiring. And you're not just sitting back. You're wanting to go out and you're wanting to give back by what you're doing. So congratulations with
thank
that.
you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Good work. Good work. All right. So till the next one, hope y'all enjoyed this one. Episode number 10 is in the can. Till the next one, keep smoking Crown Heads, keep smoking OFC. See you on 11.
Cheers.
Cheers.